Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.
And it literally looks like anytime you see on a TV show or movie of somebody having a stroke. Like, I'm asking him questions, he's not responding, he's just staring at me, he can't do anything.
This episode of Bring Back the Porch brought to you by Bernie Leahy, River Street Realty. Let's get you home.
Welcome to another episode of Manual Not Included. I'm Curtis Nash, and I promised I was going to talk about, unfortunately, the scariest day I've ever had as a parent. But before I get to that, please remember, it's so important to subscribe to Bring Back the Porch podcast if you can. So follow us on social media or subscribe on anywhere you listen to podcasts. It does the world of good, and it would help us a lot. And anytime you see a reel or a snippet, please, if you like it, comment, like it, share it with anybody else you might think would be interested in it. And thanks in advance. So now on to the dirty, ugly business. As a parent, things happen to your children. It's just, it's a matter of time. Something bad is going to happen to your kid. And unfortunately, there was maybe a couple warning signs, but we didn't know they were warning signs. They didn't seem like a warning sign or anything like that. Like at one point, my son was staying over at my parents' house, and overnight, and they came back the next day and like, oh, we were having like supper, and it looked like he was choking for a second. And we're like, oh, that's weird. But I didn't know this about ADHD kids, but they eat really fast sometimes, like too much at once. So in my head, that was par for the course. Be like, oh, he's eating too fast again, putting too much in his mouth, and you gag sometimes. We're like, okay, didn't think much of it. Another time when we were coming back from big long trip at Disney World, gone for like a couple weeks. We're sitting in the hotel room after the flight landed. It's later. We, having something to eat. We're sitting on the bed watching TV. We're all laughing and joking around. And my son, again, looks like he's choking. And he's just kind of sitting there staring at him. We're like, you okay, buddy? Are you choking? And he snaps out of it. He's like, starts laughing. He's like, what? He's like, no. He's like, nothing. He's like, I'm fine. So we're like, okay, like worry goes away. Like slight panic goes away. You're like, well, long day, right? All day on flights, overtired, that type of thing. A few months later, the night it actually happened was we were sitting in my basement, me, my daughter, and my son. I was exercising on our exercise bike. They were watching the show, and the exercise bike, like immediately to the right of it, is the couch, and he's sitting there, and they're watching TV, and I'm pretty sure it is snack, and he turns around and puts his elbows up on the couch, and he's just staring at me, and I'm like, you okay, buddy? Are you choking? And he's just sitting there mindlessly staring at me with his mouth open, trying to do something. And the first thing in my head, I remember putting my finger in his mouth to make sure there's no food in there, and he's choking, and there's nothing in there. And it literally looks like anytime you see on a TV show or movie of somebody having a stroke. Like, I'm asking him questions, he's not responding, he's just staring at me, he can't do anything. And I remember I got a little less worried because I put my fingers in his hands, because they said if you have a stroke, you won't be able to, at least one side, you won't be able to squeeze fingers or something like that, or make fists or squeeze fingers. So I tell him to squeeze my fingers, and he does. So I say, okay, he's not choking. I don't think he's having a stroke, even though at the time I was so terrified that he was. And, it was about 90 seconds of him not being responsive, asking him questions. And slowly he started making noises and, acknowledging. And after about 10 minutes, it was like he was back to himself. And I remember him saying, I kept asking him, like, could you hear me? He says, yeah, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't talk. like I tried to, he said, I tried to say something, but my brain wouldn't let me, basically. So I said, this is weird, and humming and hawing about it, and it's later at night, and I called, I can't remember the not 911, but I called the health link, the number, and I explained the situation, and they thought it was weird, and they said, you should probably take him to emergency just in case, even though he seems fine. I said, that's probably a good idea. I probably would have done that anyway. So we go to the emergency room, and we're sitting there, and they do a few tests, not a lot of tests, and the doctor on duty is like, he's like, I have a feeling he had a seizure. And they're like, what? Seizures? We're like, okay, and you kind of go through the next steps and of more doctor's appointments. Sorry to skip ahead. There's not much interesting stuff here. It's just tests, and they're like, well, we need to test to see if he's been having seizures. And they go and they put like this big thing on his head and measures like the electricity in your brain. And my wife took him to that appointment, and the results come back. He has literally hundreds and hundreds of tiny seizures all day long. Just constantly little, I don't know what they are, little like shocks to the brain or something that are unnoticeable. And the few times this has happened, that just happened to be a really, really bad one, which of course isn't good at all, because it can actually, if you have too many seizures, there's a long one, it can actually overheat your brain and do some really bad damage. So we're glad that we got it looked at. And so now, with my son's ADHD and everything, now he's epileptic. He officially has epilepsy. He's epileptic. He has seizures. And I'll commend the doctors. Doctors at the hospital were great. We have a family doctor, and because of this diagnosis as well, we were able to get a pediatrician, which he goes and visits, every 4 times a year, mandatory, to see how he's doing. And he also has a specialist neurologist in Calgary that we have to see a couple times a year to see how he's doing. And they're always in contact, and it's great. It's the best being able to ask doctors a question anytime, not anytime you want, but if you have a concern or whatever, you can always reach out. It's wonderful. So it's as simple as medication. Okay, medication, another pill he has to take, whatever. And now, but when we talk to the neurologist, like they ask him if he has any diagnosis, and we say he has ADHD. And they're like, well, he might not have ADHD because one of the things that can happen when you're epileptic and you're having all those tiny little seizures, it can mimic ADHD. So he might just be epileptic. So they're like, oh, he doesn't have ADHD. He's just epileptic and he's having seizures. So the doctor said, well, we should try out taking him off his ADHD medication and just do the epilepsy medication and see how it goes. And that was the doctor in Calgary, I believe, if I remember. It seems like so long ago. Funny thing about getting older, man, you remember like the big moments, but the little tiny things sometimes that seem important, all of a sudden you just kind of drift off. But anyway, I think it was that doctor that said, well, he might not be. So at this time, like I said before previously, that he had speech therapists because of his ADHD. He can have a trouble getting out his words. And I told her this, and she's like, and I said, well, he might be epileptic and not ADHD. How do we go forward? And she's like, well, we'll probably pause to see how it does, because if he doesn't have ADHD, then the work we're doing is just epilepsy may not help him, and these pills might get him on the straight and narrow. She said, okay. So months go by, and his behavior and overactivity hasn't changed. And we're doing an appointment. This is probably the funniest time I've ever been to the doctor. An appointment at the pediatrician here in Medicine Hat. She's a wonderful lady. She's great. I love her as our pediatrician. And you sit in the waiting room, and he was just on his A game for overactivity for some reason. He's chatting it up, getting weighed, chatting it up, getting his height, chatting it up, and the whole time waiting for, he's of course he doesn't play. There's tons of toys and like coloring. You think he would play with any of those? No, he's got to, and jump on a chair or spin around in the doctor's spinny chair before she comes in. No, you can't sit in that chair. You can't sit in that chair. He's hiding under the bed, and he's like, oh, maybe I'll just stay here till she comes in, like, as a joke, of course. I'm like, come on, buddy, come sit down. And he laughs about it. And when she comes in, he kind of sits up straight and narrow, trying. And then after about 2 minutes, that was too long to sit still, apparently. And he starts doing all those things. He's sitting, he's looking at this, he's looking at the wall. He's sitting there bouncing on my lap. Then he goes over to the bed. He's under the bed, and I'm explaining this whole situation to her. But I'm like, well, the doctor doesn't think he has ADHD and blah, 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 blah. And at the time I'm telling this story, I don't know how I can describe it to you because I can't physically do it, but it was like an old, I remember it from a Simpsons episode or something from like an old Three Stooges cartoon where he's on his side on the floor, like on his shoulder, and using his legs to stationary run in a circle like a clock dial, going around and around and around. And he's doing this as I'm explaining what the neurologist told us about epilepsy and how it mimics ADHD. And she takes one look over at him and she says, I can pretty much guarantee you that your son has ADHD. And I start laughing. And I say, okay, does that mean he has to go through like the testing in and get re-diagnosis? She's like, don't worry about it. I will vouch for it that he has ADHD. So yeah, his epilepsy did not mimic ADHD. He does have both epilepsy and ADHD. So there you go. So the scary one, and the funny part is all the tests that you do with a kid as young as he was. I think that he was 8 at the time, and you have to do these crazy tests of. It was probably I'm going to explain this test. It was probably the best day or night of his life. I can tell you that much, because you have to keep your child up. Whatever time your appointment is, because you have to do an epilepsy test when they're in a deep state of sleep. So you have to be super tired. So what they do is, I think the appointment's at like 9, say it's at 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning or something like that. They tell you, well, you have to stay up till 4 in the morning. And then you can sleep from 4 to 7. And that's it. They can sleep from 4 to 7. And then you got to wake them up and keep them awake until this appointment so they can fall asleep. And you're like, oh, okay. And have you ever tried keeping an 8-year-old up until 4 in the morning? You try to think, you can't. You try to think of all the things you can do. He gets tired so easy sometimes because he's just so overactive during the daytime that usually, 8 o'clock, 8:30 hits, like when that kid hits the pillow, like he is out cold. So I'm like, how am I going to keep this kid awake? And the only answer, because I know I've done this too many times, staying up too late because I'm playing video games. He gets to play video games for as long as he wants, which usually we don't do. But on this current night where you have to keep him awake, he was loving it. He'd have a pop every now and then, and he got to stay up playing video games. And we managed to do it. And I said, all right, 4 in the morning, we did it, buddy. We stayed up. We had a good time together. Everybody else in the house is asleep. I said, we can go to bed together, but we got to set that alarm for 7. Oh, man. You think it's hard keeping a kid awake until 4 in the morning. Try keeping him awake after you wake him up after only 3 hours. Oh, my gosh. Imagine giving your kid 3 hours of sleep and forcibly waking up and then ask him to function. It was not the easiest thing in the world, I can tell you that much. But we go to the hospital, get the test, and the funny thing is, I thought for sure, be like, oh, they're going to be recording this for like an hour or two in this dark room. They put all the electrodes on his head and all this kind of stuff. Well, like 20 minutes. 20 minutes we were done. He had his cat nap. And the even funnier thing is, after his little 20-minute nap, I'm like, oh, buddy, we'll go home. And you can go to sleep, you can relax. You got the day off school because of this. You can relax, You think that kid relaxed or had a nap? Nope. That ADHD kicked in and he was on 100 miles per hour for the rest of the day. So that's an epilepsy test. So if your kid ever has, I hope they don't have an epileptic seizure or anything like that, have to get these tests, you'll know what to expect. Non-invasive, just comical more than anything. Maybe it's just because my kid has ADHD as well. But so now we're back on track with a new diagnosis. As the doctor chuckled, definitely ADHD, definitely epileptic. I can say with confidence that it's been a few years and he has not had another bad seizure, one that we have noticed, which is good. And he's going for a test here. The last visit to Calgary we had, the doctor said, well, he's almost officially 2 years clear, which means if the tests come back good, that he's not been having seizures, we can wean him back on the medication. Because I think they said I think this fall it'll be, man, has it been 4 years? Man, time flies. Oh, when you get older. Cherish it, people. Man, the days are long, but the years are short, I can tell you that much. It might even be 4 years this fall, around wintertime or Christmas time, since he had his seizure. I think they said if it's 5 years clear, so he can half medication, 5 years clear, you can probably take him off all medication. But it takes a while to wean your body off of it. So doing it the safe way, so cross your fingers. He has another one of those overnight sleep tests in Calgary in July coming up. So hopefully it'll be good news and he hasn't been having seizures. That would be grand. That would be wonderful. But anyway, that's the story for this week. Next week, I think we'll talk about how his behavior in class changed with this ADHD and some of the things as he progresses through this diagnosis of ADHD that have come to the forefront, including some really bad OCD tendencies, behavioral problems in class, and yeah. So I'll talk to you next time. And don't forget, I'll beg you right now, I'd be on my knees right now if the mic could reach it, but please subscribe to us on Facebook and Spotify and anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please like, comment, and share on any of the videos you see. And I'll talk to you next episode.
Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.